Hello, I'm Malcolm Hazlitt. We watch the TV and see the news readers and footage of what's going on in the world, but we rarely get to meet the people behind the camera who are seeing it all for the first time. Well, this time we get to meet just one of those people who spent a lifetime behind the camera. That's next on OurTime. And welcome to OurTime, and a very special guest. His name is Craig Cooney, and we've known each other for a very long time because we've worked together in TV for a very long time.
A long time. Long time.
So we were just discussing before we came to air, I think I started as a 14-year-old on a kids show on Channel 9. How old were you when you started?
I reckon I was about 17 or 18.
Right.
1968.
And you came straight from school, I guess?
No, I had a job previous to that. I was working for an advertising agency.
Right.
Who don't exist anymore. Clem Taylor O'Brien, they were in Pirie Street.
Right.
And I was there for about a year. And then my dad actually got a phone call from John Doherty.
He was at the time the station manager? No, he wasn't.
No, he was Bill Davies 2IC.
That's right.
And he said that I'd registered for a job at Channel 9, and they rang, and Dad picked up the phone, and Dad sort of said, "Oh, well, he's at work, he's working now." And John went, well, don't worry about it. And Dad went, no, he still really wants to work in TV. So if it hadn't been for Dad, I probably wouldn't have got a job.
It's amazing, though, because we got television here in South Australia in 1959.
Yep.
And Melbourne...
56.
56 for the Olympic Games.
Correct.
When television first came here, most of us were going to either a friend's place or the local shop or watching it literally in the street with the new TV sets that were around. And, of course, it was black and white, and It was in 3x4, not 16x9 like it is now.
And it all shut down at 11 o'clock at night.
With the epilogue.
That's right. Rex
Heading saying the epilogue. So for the people here in South Australia who are our age, 36, that would hopefully bring back some pleasant memories. So, Craig, you became a cameraman, but it wasn't an instant cameraman position.
No. It was a lot of training on the job. I was a...
What did you start doing at 9 when you first started?
I was a prop boy.
Which was
sweeping floors and
picking up mail. Did you have to do the mail as well?
Yes, used to pick up the mail.
Yep, and take it around to the different departments.
No, that was more the office boy's job.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They had an office boy that obviously had a lot more money than they do now.
Well, it was very labour intensive because we had 3 crews. We had the A crew, who did the Adelaide Tonights and the Country and Western Hours and all that. B crew did a lot of the kids shows, and the Channel 9ers, and the C crew, which I started in, was the prop crew, who helped build sets. And on Adelaide Tonight, we'd move sets in and out between acts and all that sort of thing.
I think people have forgotten that live television in those days actually moved, you might say. The studios were quite large. There were big sets. Some would fly up, some would be on wheels just to push out. It was a really big thing, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. It was, and we didn't have the technology in those days that we've got now. And so everything was manual, everything. We didn't have replays, and if it went wrong, it went wrong.
It went wrong and it went out live.
That's right.
Yeah. So what drew you to it in the first place?
Well, I always say that Mum and Dad took me to an episode of Adelaide Tonight.
Right.
When I was only probably 10 or 12, I suppose.
Right.
And
so that would have been really right at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. And all I looked at the entire day, Dad said to me afterwards, he said, "Oh, what do you think of it?" I said, "I want a job as a cameraman." Well, all I did was stare at the cameras all night. In those days, we had a crane in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think it might have been Dean Johnson that did the crane. It was either Dean or... When I started there, it was John Cronshaw and Dennis Safe.
And all these guys went on to be directors.
Yep. Yep. And Paul Dowitts became a very accomplished cinematographer, and one of the best I'm fortunate enough to meet was Dean Semler.
Yes, who
won an Oscar.
Yep.
For Dances with Wolves.
You know, what's interesting about it is that there were no teachers. There was nowhere to learn to do this in those days, apart from really on the job.
That was the only place to learn.
Yeah. So everyone was learning how to make this new medium together.
And a lot of people graduated from radio because that seemed to be the way to do it.
The on-camera people? or the
Would have
technicians?
been the techs.
Anybody?
A lot of techs, I would have imagined, came from radio. A few guys, I think Ron, he was the program manager at Channel 9. Rex Heading, I think he had a radio background.
Rex had a radio background, as did the general manager. He also came from 5KA, who I will remember in a minute.
Dean, goodness me.
As were you.
Him.
Yeah, well, really, we were in those rather halcyon days when Channel 9 in Adelaide was literally Hollywood in South Australia.
Absolutely.
Because everybody from all over the world came through the studios for the Tonight shows, Country and West now, even the areas that I worked in and you worked in for a lot of the time, Making His Humphrey, the afternoon live kids shows, the Curiosity show, and all of those things. The studios were working flat out all the time.
And it was all locally produced too. It was all local people.
All local people doing it. And what's a bit sad now, and this was our concern about losing community television, is that so much television comes now from somewhere else. And consequently, you're not getting to know the local people. They're not, you can't meet them, you can't see them at your local shopping mall or wherever you might want to or not. And you don't build that friendship base. No. Because that's what it was like, wasn't it? It was a big family.
Yeah, it was also a little bit mysterious as well. It had this aura of how the hell do they do this? Some of the things we used to get away with was frightening.
Well, my memories, particularly for you guys, there was like the big three of cameramen at Channel 9 when I was there, who did the Adelaide Tonight shows and so on. And I do remember one guy who we both know very well, Dul Drugan, was quite an expert at standing on the pedestal of the camera at the back of the studio, and there'd be a singer out there somewhere, and he'd push himself off and he'd literally sail across.
Fly. Yeah.
And the shot would be perfectly in focus, perfectly held until it finished. Those things we don't see anymore because now there are camera cranes and there's rails on the floor and all that sort of stuff.
Well, it's all robotics now.
And it's robotic now, yeah. That's a bit sad in a way. Look, here's a shot with you looking very young.
Fairweather.
And Ian Fairweather, yeah. And this was one of the first colour cameras, which is why it's spelled wrong.
Marconi marked that.
Yes, because it came from France, the cameras, didn't they?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, they did, because I took one of the boxes home and made a clock out of it. Because I used to do craft segments.
Oh, God.
Now, what was that Logie for?
That was for, when I was working at Channel 7, that was for State Affair.
Right.
And when that started, there were only three of us. Pat Hudson was the journalist, I was the camo, and I can't remember the producer's name.
But in the introduction, I was saying, we see, as a viewer watching television, we see what's happening in front of the camera, but we don't see what you actually see because you choose what to see.
Well, if
that makes sense.
It is, especially when you're doing news gathering or a current affair. You work very, very closely with the journalist. And one of my favourite journalists, and there's been a lot, was Bob Harnett, he's now retired and he's working he's living in Queensland. And he used to look at the script or look at the story and say, "Oh, mate, this is your show, this one." And he said, because it's pictorial. He said, "You shoot it and I'll write the words to it."
Right.
And then he'd get in a car another day and said, "No, this is about, I've got to write this, mate." He said, "I'll give you the shots that I need to fill it."
To put in it, yeah.
And he was great to work with, and he was a real wordsmith. He was brilliant.
It is, because you've got just this tiny little bit of time to tell a whole story in pictures and words.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've got to condense, like, for instance, the Ash Wednesday bushfires. That went forever.
And we've got some shots of that, and they're just extraordinary because the haze in the background of the debris that was falling after the fire, the helicopter, you with your camera on the ground, all of those things. They're all things that really make us feel at home, that we're part of it, that we're experiencing it too. But you were there, smelling it, in danger.
It was terrible. It was. I can remember the day in 1984. It was a hot day and an amazing northerly wind, and the whole of the foothills was on fire. It was incredible, and when the chopper landed, the pilot said, "Look, Craig, I've got to land." But choppers they need clean air. And because it was so dusty and there was so much smoke and the wind was it was like watching some of the shots was as if somebody was at the bottom of the hill with a flamethrower, just going like that. And it was just roaring up. I can remember seeing gum trees would about 2 feet above the gum tree. It'd exploding from the eucalyptus oil, and that would just go boom. It's like a bomb.
Having come from the hills, I know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
But that's the experience because you were there.
Yeah.
We just get to see it and we feel for the people or the circumstance, but we don't feel what you must have felt in that time.
We were lucky enough. I think there was about 6 camos on the ground, and we finished up winning a national award for the coverage of it, all the 3
Because
camos.
of the danger you were in?
Not that and the visual.
The visuals you got because you were there.
We got
Yeah.
for it. But it was one of those sort of things that you couldn't miss to get a great shot.
No.
Because there was so much happening.
It's a brave time. It's genuinely a brave time. There's so much more to talk about, including some of the personalities that Craig has worked with, and we'll be back to do that in just a tick. Our very special guest on this episode of Our Time is cameraman Craig Cooney. Have you retired, Craig?
Yes, I have.
Why?
Age might be part of it.
No.
I think COVID drove it because I was freelancing, and because when the first lockdown, which was middle of last year, I went to my financial advisor and I said, look, and it was very hard to get work because there was none around. And he said, well, I was thinking about retiring this year, but he said, just bring it forward. But I must admit, I have been doing a little bit just to help guys out and things like that.
It's something that's hard to let go of though, isn't it,
Oh,
really?
absolutely.
Because it opens so many doors for you that wouldn't be opened. You see so many things that you'd never get to see if you weren't doing this job.
It's incredible.
It takes you everywhere.
Well, like I've been overseas 4 or 5 times and paid for it once. And
Me too,
doing the jobs.
What are some of the most exciting things you've been involved in, do you think?
Well, Tiananmen Square wasn't exciting, but it was interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, it was like, it was so different because the culture is so completely different. And it was a terrible time to be there. But
what were you working on then? What show?
I was working with Darren Hinch then.
Right.
And I was sent over there. We were over there for about 2 weeks, I think.
Was he good to work with?
I got on very well with Darren. He was a really nice bloke.
He really opened a lot of doors, I think, in the whole television world, as he's done in so many different ways.
They called him the human headline.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Drew to attention, maybe not always the best, but he drew to attention of the public a lot of things that we would never have known about.
If he was very passionate about anything that he did. He was incredibly passionate. And you had to have a very good argument to prove him wrong. He was, he broke some amazing stories. But that was a little bit before my time.
But travelling with somebody like that is a human headline.
I didn't actually travel with Darren. He was the front man for it.
Oh, he was the front man in the show,
and
of course.
When Hinch started, it was in Melbourne first, and then it came to Adelaide. So I spent a lot of time out of Adelaide because we were shooting stories in WA, the Northern Territory.
Right. Yes.
And the Victorian boys would look after Victoria, New South Wales, and we used to look after Tasmania as well.
Did you have, I guess some of the people you worked with back in those days are still lifelong friends.
Oh, yeah.
And it's almost like, because they were all male in those days, we have an all-female crew here tonight.
And they're very good too.
They are. Why wouldn't they be? But in those days, there was a reason they were men. The cameras were heavy. It was difficult to move stuff around. It was a different game.
There was a lady that worked for the ABC. Pat.
Her name is Pat.
Pat.
And she wrote a book about her life and talking about the bushfires. She was one of the people that was a stringer cameraman.
She was a groundbreaker.
Yes, she was.
Absolute groundbreaker.
First female cameraman in the world.
Yeah, and was very good, not just because she was the first female or the first whatever. She was a very good camo.
Well, she used to come out with us shooting the Here's Humphrey program when we'd do studio-based stuff, and then when we walked out of the door of Humphrey's house, wherever it was, it went to film.
Yeah.
And no sound on the film, so we'd voice over the film, sort of tell the story of what we were saying or not saying. And Pat used to say, I'll just get down here and she'd be on the ground or she'd be up in a tree or she'd be somewhere. I'll just come up to the camera here and because she would basically direct the films.
Oh, yeah.
And she just had such a good eye for the angle, for the, just to get that. She told a story in her pictures so well.
Oh, yeah.
We recently, how long ago was it? I suppose had a 50th anniversary of Channel 9 here in Adelaide, and she happened to be there.
Oh, I was there, but I didn't
Yeah,
catch
it was
up with
just great to see.
Well, Annie North was there.
Yes.
I don't think Ian Fairweather didn't come over, but there was a lot of people there. From the old days.
Yes, there were. But in the early days of television, like we said earlier, the people on camera were really well known because...
Oh, they were household names.
They came into your house every night or every day just about. But also the camera people were as well because the people on camera often used to...
Oh, Sealy, you'd be having shots at cameramen every day.
Yeah.
Every night.
Yes.
It was just hysterical.
It was because it made it like a big happy family all making this show. Yeah. The thing about live television is it's a once only. Yeah. It's not something you can really rehearse that much for and then suddenly you're on air and it's gone into
and I
the
think
ether.
sometimes you can over-rehearse it.
Yes.
It's the immediacy of live TV.
I mean, we haven't rehearsed all these questions?
No, mate. No.
We haven't actually.
Hang on a minute, I'll just give them notes.
Exactly. No, well, learning from the people who came before us was really the only way for us to achieve anything.
Absolutely, because there was nobody that knew it. So we would, there were a lot of guys before me and ladies before me, but there was nobody, they couldn't set up like a university to teach people how to do a camera. And
because they weren't teachers, you were just learning on the job.
Absolutely.
So there was a process actually. You started as either the messenger boy or prop boy, or you started as a messenger boy and graduated to a prop boy, then you might the C crew.
You go to the B crew, which was the kids shows.
Yeah.
And I can remember my first OB, outside broadcast, was at the Woodville Bowl with Blair Schwartz.
Goodness, playing piano, was he?
No, he was commentating the bowls.
Oh, right. Okay.
And that was a three camera shoot.
Oh, that's right. They used to have that on of a Friday night or something.
I think it might.
I think my dad really liked watching that for some reason, watching balls roll down.
Yeah. We had one camera halfway down the lane.
Yes.
And one camera over the back, and I think there was one
with the commentator explaining what was going on.
Yeah.
It was riveting TV.
But they would have a crack at anything, you know.
Well, it brought the world to people that would never have gone to those places.
No.
I mean, how lucky are we to have lived in a generation that didn't have and then has had, as today's people are lucky to be in a worldwide generation of social media.
Yeah, but I've got to think about social media, right? I think it can be used brilliantly or it can be really destructive.
Well, I think people had the same about TV. Ruining your brain.
Oh, yeah.
That people would go blind watching the TV. There was all those things, and kids watch too much TV. You've got to limit the TV for kids. And that's why we had children's programs between a 4 and a 6 o'clock time slot. And it's why with the 10 Network, they had Fat Cat who went to bed at 7:30.
That's right.
Because really, television controlled a whole family life.
Yep.
You either sat down and watched the news while you ate dinner, or you watched the 7 o'clock newsy type programs, whatever they were, or a Happy Days program that came from America.
The Real McCoys. And
all of those, all in beautiful black and white, glorious black and white.
Yeah.
When colour came, things changed for everybody because there was more attention to detail.
Yeah, the whole lighting changed because the cameras were a lot better in terms of low light. So we used to pour light in the black and white. You'd pour light onto the set.
You'd be blinded.
Well, you'd be fainting with the heat.
There used to be above us, being an on-camera person, there used to be what we called scoops.
Scoops, the round ones.
And the scoops were sort of everywhere in front of you, and as you looked up, you just, dozens of lights burning your eyes.
Yeah.
But considering when you go back, even when television first started, the amount of light that was needed, and the fact that the performers on telly had to have white faces with heavy black eyeliner and black lips so that their images could come through, haven't we come a long way?
Oh, it's like when I started there, the news was shot on film, half of it.
Yes, yeah. Pretty amazing. It was just one newsreader on a tiny little set, not much bigger than...
we used to roll it in.
Yes.
At Channel 9.
Yes, amazing. We'll be back to talk about someone who's very special to both of us in just a minute. Welcome back to Our Time with our special guest, Craig Cooney. Craig, unfortunately, last week we heard the sad news that Ernie Sigley, who we both had a great connection with, had passed on.
Yep.
Here's a shot of you and Ernie together. It would have been on the set of Adelaide Tonight on the Wheel of Fortune, I gather it was called, that made a star of Ann Wills here in South Australia. And when Ernie moved to Melbourne, he did the same with Denise Drysdale. Ernie was special to me, but why was he special to you, particularly in this photograph?
Well, that was my 21st, and I was doing camera 3, which was that side of him, and he called out and he said, "Oh, Craig, come out here." And he said, "Congratulations on your 21st birthday," and gave me a watch. Well, unfortunately, the watch that he took was a Seiko, and it was quite expensive, and he took it off. They were one of the major sponsors.
Yep.
And he gave me this watch, and the
watch is just there.
Yeah. And the commercial production people went, "Oh my God, he's given away this really expensive watch." He said, "I'm not taking it back."
No, that'd be Ernie.
But the funny thing was, I invited him to my 21st birthday, and I thought, he turns up, doesn't matter. No. And I'll never forget the look on my mother's face when the doorbell rang and she opened the door and Ernie's standing there. I thought she was going to faint. It was hysterical.
Well, that was the thing. The people as we said at the beginning, the people on TV were really looked upon as sort of special human beings, as if they'd come from another place.
Absolutely. I think that's sort of disappeared a little bit now because we don't
I think it's disappeared almost completely, actually.
Well, we don't do any live TV at all.
No. So you don't see the warts and all stuff, and that's what makes us human.
Absolutely.
And it's actually one of the things about this program, whatever we talk about is what the people at home will see because we don't make any cuts as such. It is what it is. It's a live show.
Yeah.
Ernie, to me, was quite special for many reasons. My office was just across from him. He had a caravan just outside the main building at Channel 9, and we were in a house in the same sort of lot, so to speak. And my window had no screen on it, so we used to push the window up and we'd talk through the window. And he gave me the greatest advice about interviewing, which I'm not going to pass on at this time, but and I've lived by that ever since. Because the simplicity of what he said was how I approach talking with people in this program. And it makes such good common sense because if we're meeting for the first time and having a conversation for the first time, then that's real because that's what's going home.
Well, I can remember the hardest interview that Ernie ever did. I don't know whether you remember a guy called Michael Cole.
Yes.
He was in a program called Mod Squad.
Yes.
And Michael Cole came on the set. And
he wasn't well.
Oh, he wasn't a well chicken.
Wasn't.
He was in La La Land.
Yes.
And Ernie said, "Well, what do you think of Adelaide, Michael?" And he went, "Great, man." And that was about all Ernie got out of him. And Ernie just froze. He went, "Where do I go from here?"
Yeah. It's difficult because you can see either terror in people's eyes or you can see they're not playing with me today.
No, that's right.
They've been off on another planet for a little while.
Yeah.
But Ernie had the glibness of a turn of a phrase. He had the comedic ability. He had the ability to look like he was busking when he wasn't. And he had the look that he'd organised something when he wasn't, when he hadn't, I mean. The Wheel of Fortune thing, it was such an ad-lib thing and anything could happen.
Oh,
and he knew how to capitalise on that.
The little Aussie, what do they call it? The little Aussie battler.
Yeah. And today, last week when it passed, I had several people like Joey Moore, who now lives in Sydney, and Dean Davis, who used to do the kids show, contacting me, and a few others saying, you know, have you heard, and what did Ernie mean to you? And he meant a teacher to me, and someone who really showed us how to work television in a way that was human. Craig, it's been great talking with you.
I've enjoyed it.
Yes, so have I. We hope you have too, because people like Craig are now a group of people we don't see that much of, sadly.
Well, we should. Well, I see a bit of you.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. We see each other. And keeping up with the old crowd at Channel 9 has been just lovely. So until next time on Our Time, and until next time we see you, take care, keep yourself nice till then, and thanks, Craig, so much.
Absolute pleasure.
We'll see you next time on Our Time.